She walked alone across the frost. People stepped aside when she passed. They whispered her name, but never loud. You clicked this video because you saw the title. The most feared Viking old woman who chose who lived and died. Her face stayed hidden behind a wool hood. Her voice stayed low. Her judgment shaped whole winters. A mother begged before her. A young warrior froze before her. A chieftain lowered his eyes. She pointed toward life or toward death. No one refused her word. No one questioned her choice. Tonight you follow one family who met her in the dark snow. Their fate turned on one breath from her lips. Stay with this. You will hear how she decided who survived. You see her now. An old woman with a slow step and a steady hand. Her hood covers her eyes. Her silence turns crowds quiet. Villagers say she chose who lived and who died. They say her word held more weight than any sword. You follow one family that stood before her. A family pushed to the edge during a hungry winter. Listen to her steps on hard snow. Listen to the breath of the people waiting for her voice. Stay close as she draws near. Before we move deeper, take a slow breath. Let your shoulders rest. Let your jaw loosen. Settle under your blanket or find a warm seat. The night outside the story stays still for a moment. If you are watching from home, from work, from a train, or from far away, tell me where you are. I read every place you share. If this story gives you calm, press like. If you want more nights like this, press subscribe. Your support keeps these stories moving. Let the light in your room lower a bit. Let the sound guide you. Soon we follow the old woman into the snow. We follow the family that waited for her judgment. Now, breathe again. The story begins when you are ready. The wind pushed thin snow across the open field. The sun sat low behind thick clouds. The ground held the marks of many feet. Each print showed a small slide from the frozen soil. The farm border stood near a line of bare birch trees. Beyond them lay the village track. Smoke rose from a few longhouses far off. The air held no sound except the wind and the crack of thin ice under weight. A family waited near the trees. A father named Torleif, a mother named Asgard, their son named Frode, their daughter named Hild. All stood close to each other. Their breath formed small clouds. None spoke. They waited for the old woman who walked alone each season. She always came when the snows deepened. She always came when the village needed a voice no one else trusted. Torleif held his axe in his right hand. It hung low. He kept it in sight but did not lift it. He knew it held no use today. Asgard kept a wool wrap around Hild's shoulders. The girl shook from the cold. Frode stood stiff. He stared down the track. He hoped he would see her first. He wanted to show courage. He wanted proof he stood ready for the choice she brought. Each person in the village grew up hearing her story. They learned. She lived alone in a small hut that sat where the forest met stone ridges. They learned she spoke to no one for most of the year. They learned she appeared only when people asked the gods for signs and found none. Some said she listened to old spirits older than the gods. Some said she held old knowledge from the first settlers who crossed the sea. Some said she lost her own family long ago and now judged others with a dry heart. No one knew the truth. None risked guessing to her face. Torleif sent a message days ago. He did not want to. He had no other choice. His last harvest failed. Wolves took 2 sheep. The winter fish catch came in thin. His fields froze early. His stores now sat half full. His wife warned him. His children watched the jars shrink week after week. The chieftain said he could offer aid, but only if the old woman approved. The chieftain always deferred to her when winter tightened its hold. No silver or promises worked without her word. So Torleif walked into the woods with a small gift of dried meat and left it by her path. He spoke her name soft. He asked for her help. He asked her to look at his family. He asked her to decide if they earned more grain from the village stores or if they must stand on their own. He returned home with no answer. Now he waited for her to arrive. Time moved slow. Snow drifted over the birch roots. Hild leaned into her mother. Frode rubbed his hands together. Torleif watched the track. He felt each breath push tight against his ribs. He knew the whole village judged him for calling her. They whispered that only families in deep trouble called her each winter. They whispered that her arrival marked shame. They whispered that she pointed toward life or death. Then Frode's voice cut the air. He raised his hand. His voice held a short tremble. "Father, she comes." Torleif turned his head. Asgerd lowered her chin. Hild pressed close. The old woman stepped into sight. She moved slow. Her staff pressed into snow. Each tap sounded like a knock on a longhouse door. Her hood stayed low. Her stride never changed. She did not look up. She walked like she followed a path no one else saw. Torleif stepped forward. He lowered his axe to the ground. Asgerd and the children stepped behind him. Torleif bowed his head. He held his breath. He knew she listened more to silence than speech. The old woman stopped. The staff leaned slightly. Her hands looked thin but steady. She lifted her chin a small bit. Torleif saw part of her face, only her mouth. Her lips looked pale. Her voice broke the cold air. "You sent word." Torleif lowered his head more. "I did. You asked for judgment." "I did. You asked for help." "Yes." She tilted her head. The hood shifted. Torleif still could not see her eyes. "Show me your home." Torleif turned toward the track. He nodded once. "This way." The family walked ahead of her. She moved behind them. Her steps stayed slow. She never hurried. She pressed her staff into snow each few steps. Frode kept glancing back. Asgerd kept her pace steady. Hild looked only at the ground. The sky darkened. Torleif felt sweat under his tunic, though the air stayed cold. He wanted to speak. He held back. No one spoke to her without her asking. A silent rule held stronger than law. They reached the farm. The longhouse stood low. Smoke escaped through a small vent. Torleif opened the door. Warm light touched the snow. The family entered. The old woman stepped in last. She tapped her staff against the threshold and stood still for a moment. She listened. Then she moved to the hearth. Torleif waited. She crouched near the fire. She warmed her hands. She breathed. The flames lit her hood. Her face stayed hidden. The room held a long quiet. Asgerd placed a bowl of warm broth near her. She did not touch it. Torleif kept his voice low. "We lost much this season." "I know," she said. "My stores are thin." "I know. My children need food." "They do." Torleif waited for more. She said nothing. Frode shifted his weight. Hild held Asgerd's hand. The old woman turned her head toward the family. "Tell me each loss," Torleif began. He listed each failure, each wolf attack, each frozen field, each broken tool. He spoke slow, so she caught every detail. She did not interrupt. Her hood stayed still. Her staff lay across her lap. When he finished, she lifted her hand. Torleif stopped talking. "You asked for grain from the stores," she said. "Yes." "You asked for help from the chieftain." "Yes." "You asked for life." Torleif felt his heart pound. "Yes." She pushed her staff against the floor. She rose slow. The fire crackled behind her. She turned toward Asgerd. You. Speak. Asgard swallowed. We tried to mend the nets. We tried to guard the sheep. We tried to save the roots before the frost. We tried each day. The old woman nodded once. Your children. She stepped toward Frode. The boy straightened. His face turned red from heat and fear. She lifted her hand. She placed it on his shoulder. Frode held his breath. You want to be strong. Yes, Frode said. You want to feed them. Yes. You want more than you have. Yes. She lowered her hand. She turned to Hild. The girl hid behind Asgard. The old woman crouched. She waited until Hild looked at her. You fear the cold, the woman said. Hild nodded. You fear hunger. Hild nodded again. You fear me. Hild stayed still. She whispered, Yes. The old woman placed her hand on the girl's arm. It rested there light. Then she rose and stepped back to the fire. She spoke again. I will see your stores. Torleif led her to the corner where the jars stood. He opened each lid. She leaned over them. She traced the edges with her hand. She smelled the dried fish. She touched the grain with her fingers. She nodded once. She asked no question. She turned back to Torleif. She pointed her staff at him. Do you know why you suffer? Torleif shook his head. No. You worked hard, she said. Yes. You guarded your fields. I tried. You prayed to the gods. Yes. You did not answer one thing. Torleif looked confused. What thing? You waited for others to save you. Torleif wanted to speak. His throat tightened. I asked for help only when time grew thin. You waited too long, she said. You let your fear slow your hands. You let your worry spread through the house. You let your fields decide your fate. You did not take each day and bend it. He stared at the ground. He knew she spoke with weight. He felt shame rise inside him. She walked back to the hearth. She sat again. She held her staff across her knees. Your family stands close. Your wife shows strength. Your son shows spirit. Your daughter shows truth. I give my judgment soon. First I stay here tonight. Torleif blinked. You wish to rest here? Yes. Prepare a place. Asgard hurried to set a bed near the fire. She rolled blankets. She placed a small wooden stool beside it. The old woman lowered herself. She set her staff at her side. She leaned back and closed her eyes. Torleif stood unsure. Do you need anything? No, she said. Her voice ended the conversation. The family moved to the far side of the longhouse. They kept their voices low. Hild whispered, Is she sleeping? Asgard placed her hand on Hild's head. She rests now, Frode whispered. Will she help us? Torleif kept his eyes on the fire. I hope so. Night settled slow. The wind outside eased. The longhouse warmed. The old woman did not move for a long time. Torleif found himself watching her. He wondered what thoughts moved in her mind. He wondered if she remembered his message days ago. He wondered if she judged him already, or still weighed his words. Hours passed, the fire dimmed. Asgard placed more wood on it. Sparks rose. Torleif saw the old woman shift. She opened her eyes. She sat up. She looked toward the door. Torleif stepped toward her. Do you hear something? Yes. She stood. She took her staff. She walked to the door. She pulled it open. Cold air pushed in. She stepped out. Torleif followed. Frode followed. Asgard held Hild behind her. Outside, the moon showed through thin clouds. Snow covered everything. The air felt still. The old woman stepped toward the birch trees. Torleif stayed behind her. Frode kept close. She lifted her staff. She touched the ground with it. She listened. Her voice came low. Someone approaches. Torleif looked around. Who? Watch. Moments later, a man appeared at the far bend of the track. His walk looked strained. His clothes looked worn. He held a small bundle under his arm. He saw them and hurried. Torleif stepped forward. "Rolf, what brings you here?" Rolf stopped. He bent down to catch his breath. "My house fell to the storm 2 nights ago. My wife is hurt. I came to ask for help. I heard she was here." Torleif glanced at the old woman. She did not turn toward Rolf. She kept her staff planted in the snow. Rolf bowed his head to her. "Please, I need your judgment. I need help for my wife." The old woman lowered her head. "Step closer." Rolf did. He knelt before her. He held out the small bundle. She took it. She opened the cloth. Inside lay a small carving, a simple figure shaped by hand. Rolf spoke. "She carved it for me before the storm. I brought it to show her strength." The old woman closed the cloth. She returned it to Rolf. "Rise." Rolf stood. He shook from cold and fear. She spoke. "Your roof fell. Your wife hurt her leg." "Yes." "You brought no food for trade." "No, I rushed." "You left your wife alone." "I had to." "You fear she will die." Rolf nodded. She raised her staff. She pointed toward Torleif's house. "You stay here for the night." Rolf looked surprised. "Here?" "Yes." Torleif opened his mouth. He closed it. He nodded. "He will stay." Rolf bowed. "Thank you." The old woman walked back to the longhouse. Torleif and Frode followed. Rolf followed behind them. Inside the house, she took her seat near the fire again. Her face stayed hidden under the hood. Rolf sat near the wall. Asgerd gave him water. He drank slow. The old woman spoke to no one for the rest of the night. She watched the flames. She listened to each crack. She waited. Torleif could not read her silence. He did not know if her judgment changed now that another need entered the house. He felt fear rise again. He knew the village respected her for reasons they never explained. He wondered if she saw a thread between his family and Rolf's need. He wondered if she weighed both families at once. Morning came gray. Light seeped through the smoke vent. The fire glowed low. Torleif rose. Asgerd stirred. Frode rubbed his eyes. Hild sat up and yawned. The old woman already stood. She faced the door. She held her staff. She said only one word. "Come." Torleif, Asgerd, Frode, Hild, and Rolf followed her outside. The snow felt stiff under their boots. The cold air stung their cheeks. She turned to Torleif. "You asked for help. He asked too. Winter presses both houses. The village needs strength. Weak homes weaken all." Torleif nodded. "You ask for life. He asks for life." She lifted her staff. "I choose by truth." Rolf held his breath. Torleif tightened his hands. The old woman pointed her staff at Torleif. "You wait too long. You fear shame. You hide your need. This weakens your home." Torleif lowered his head. She pointed her staff at Rolf. "You rush. You leave your hurt wife. You come with no plan. This weakens your home." Rolf closed his eyes. She lowered the staff. "Both homes stand. Both homes struggle. I give one judgment for both." Torleif braced himself. Rolf stood frozen. "You will help each other." Torleif gives grain to Rolf for a short time. Rolf helps Torleif rebuild his fence and guard his fields. Both homes rise. Torleif exhaled. Rolf nodded fast. "Yes, I will help." The old woman faced Torleif. "Your stores stay thin. You gain strength from shared hands." She faced Rolf. "Your wife gains warmth from their hearth until you repair yours." She raised her staff once more. "This is life." She tapped the ground. The sound echoed clear across the snow. She turned and walked toward the trees. She did not speak again. She did not look back. She moved until she faded into the woods. Her staff left small marks in the snow. Torleif watched her go. Asgerd held Hild close. Frode breathed out a long breath. Rolf wiped tears from his face. The cold air moved around them. The village now waited for news of her judgment. Torleif felt weight lift from his chest. He looked at Rolf. He offered his hand. Rolf took it. Both men knew the winter would still test them. Both stood ready now. They carried her judgment with them. They knew she chose life for both homes, but they also knew she watched them from the woods in her own way. They knew she expected proof of their strength beyond words. The first day under her judgment began. The first day after her visit felt different. The air held the same cold. The snow stayed hard on the ground. The wind pushed thin frost through the birch branches. Yet something in the longhouse shifted. Torleif felt it when he woke. He sat near the hearth before the others stirred. He held a cup of warm broth and watched the light rise through the smoke vent. The old woman's words stayed clear in his head. He repeated them in silence. Both homes rise. Both homes struggle. Strength comes from shared hands. He heard soft steps behind him. Asgerd joined him near the fire. She wrapped her shawl tight. Her face still looked tired from nights of worry, but her eyes held a sharper focus. She sat beside him. "She chose life," Asgerd said. Torleif nodded. "She did. She expects us to follow it." "Yes." Asgerd's eyes went to the sleeping figures on the far side of the longhouse. Rolf lay wrapped in blankets. Frode slept near him. Hild snored in short breaths. "He will want to leave soon," Asgerd whispered. "We bring him food," Torleif said. "We help his wife, then he stays here until he repairs his house. She will need help too." Torleif set his cup down. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I know." Asgerd placed her hand on his shoulder. "We follow her word. We stay strong. The village watches." Torleif leaned into her hand for a moment. He felt her warmth. He felt the weight of the season. He felt the start of change. Rolf woke with a sharp breath. He sat up fast. He looked around before he remembered where he lay. He lowered his shoulders. He muttered a small thanks. Asgerd handed him a bowl. He ate slow. His hand shook from hunger. Torleif stood. Frode stirred and sat up. Hild blinked awake. Torleif spoke. "We move now. Rolf, we follow you to your house. We bring back your wife." Rolf swallowed. "She waits for me." "Then we go," Torleif said. They dressed in heavy cloaks. Torleif held an axe. Frode carried rope. Asgerd wrapped spare cloths. Hild stayed with her mother near the hearth. Rolf tightened his boots. Torleif opened the door. Cold swept in. They stepped outside. The air stung their cheeks. The sky stayed gray. Thin flakes drifted. The ground held the marks from the old woman's staff, now covered half by new snow. Rolf led them toward the far edge of the village. His house sat near a small ridge. A storm had torn its roof. Torleif saw the broken beams from a distance. When they reached the door, Rolf hurried inside. Torleif entered behind him. Frode followed. A woman lay on blankets near the hearth. Her leg looked swollen. Her hair stuck to her face. She smiled weak when she saw Rolf. Rolf knelt beside her. "I came back. They came too." She touched his hand. "The house is ruined." Torleif stepped forward. "We take you to our home. You rest there until this place stands again." She looked at Torleif with wide eyes. "Your family already suffers." Torleif shook his head. "The old woman gave judgment. This is the path." She nodded slow. "Then I follow it." Frode stepped closer. We prepared blankets. Rolf and Torleif lifted her with care. They wrapped her leg in cloth. They carried her onto a small sled Frode found near the broken wall. Snow fell soft as they pulled her along the path. Asgerd and Hild stood outside the longhouse when they returned. Asgerd opened the door wide. Hild moved blankets near the fire. They set Rolf's wife down gently. She sighed in relief as warmth touched her face. Asgerd knelt beside her. "We keep the fire strong. We warm broth. You rest." Rolf sat beside his wife. He placed his hand over hers. His eyes softened. "Thank you." Torleif nodded. "Your work starts tomorrow. Today you rest with her." Rolf lowered his head. "I will follow her word." Torleif stepped outside with Frode. He closed the door behind him. The cold bit at his face. He exhaled long. "This will test us," Torleif said. Frode nodded. "I help however needed." "Your strength grows," Torleif said. "But strength needs direction. You do not rush. You do not wait too long. You move steady." Frode bowed his head. "I hear you." They walked to the fence line. The old wood leaned inward. Wolves had broken part of it weeks ago. The posts tilted. Torleif touched one. It wobbled under his hand. "We start here tomorrow," Torleif said. "Will Rolf help?" "Yes, he must. His home stands only if ours stands." Frode kicked snow away from the base of a post. "Will the old woman return soon?" Torleif shook his head. "She stays hidden most seasons. She comes when called or when she senses trouble." Frode glanced at the woods. She knew Rolf needed help. "Yes," Torleif said. "She listens to things we do not hear." They returned to the longhouse. Warmth met them. Asgerd stirred a pot. Rolf sat near his wife. Hild sorted dried herbs. Hours passed. The day stayed quiet. The longhouse filled with slow breathing, small movements, crackling wood, and the faint sound of wind outside. Asgerd served broth. Rolf's wife ate slow but steady. Frode brought more wood. Hild whispered stories to the woman to calm her. Torleif sharpened his axe and repaired a broken hinge. Late in the afternoon, Torleif noticed Rolf watching him. Rolf stood and walked toward him. "Torleif," Rolf said, voice low, "I owe you more than words." Torleif shook his head. "We follow her judgment. We help each other." "You risk your stores," Rolf said. "You risk your strength," Torleif said. "You left your wife to reach us. You walked through cold night. You trusted her judgment too." Rolf lowered his eyes. "I feared losing her." Torleif placed a hand on Rolf's shoulder. "Fear does not shame you, but fear must not rule you." Rolf breathed out. "I hear her words in my head." Torleif nodded. "We all do." Rolf returned to his wife. Torleif stepped outside. Again. He needed fresh air. Frode joined him. Snow drifted in light sheets. The village looked dull under the dim sky. Smoke rose from longhouses. A few villagers walked the paths. They glanced at Torleif and Frode. Their eyes held quiet questions. "Father," Frode said, "the village watches." "Yes." "They wait to see if we rise." "Yes." Frode straightened his back. "We rise." Torleif placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Good." They walked toward the far field where the sheep once grazed. The fence line here sagged in 3 places. The ground held deep snow. Torleif crouched and brushed snow aside. He checked the posts. Many cracked. Some leaned outward from the wolves' last push. He studied them in silence. "Rolf helps here tomorrow," Torleif said. "You help too. We fix every post before the next freeze." Frode nodded. They returned to the longhouse as the sky darkened. Evening came fast in winter. Inside, the fire glowed bright. Rolf's wife rested. Asgerd hummed a low tune. Hild fell asleep near the hearth. Torleif sat beside Asgerd. "How is she?" Asgerd kept her voice low. "She grows warmer. Her leg stays swollen. She needs rest." She will stay long, Thorleif said. Yes, Asgerd replied. But she brings her spirit. It helps. Thorleif stared at the flames. He thought again of the old woman's staff tapping the snow. He wondered if she already moved deep into the woods. He wondered if she stopped at other homes. He wondered how she chose when to return. Night held the longhouse in steady quiet. Thorleif lay down last. He made sure the fire stayed strong. He checked that Rolf and his wife slept well. He checked that Frode and Hild lay warm under blankets. Then he closed his eyes. Morning came with pale light and sharp cold. Thorleif woke early. He stepped outside. Frost covered the ground like thin white sand. His breath rose in long trails. He walked to the woodpile. He split logs with slow, even strikes. Each crack echoed across the field. Frode joined him. He picked up the split wood and stacked it near the door. When they finished, Thorleif pointed toward Rolf's house. We go now. Frode tightened his gloves. I am ready. They walked to the broken house. Rolf waited outside. His face held more strength than the day before. His wife stayed at the longhouse while Asgerd cared for her. Rolf held 2 replacement beams on his shoulder. I found these near the river, Rolf said. Thorleif nodded. Good, we repair the wall first. They worked in silence. Frode held tools. Thorleif and Rolf lifted the beams. They fitted them into place. They hammered wooden pegs through the holes. Snow drifted around them. Their breath made steam in the air. They worked until the structure held steady again. Rolf stepped back and studied the frame. This will hold, Thorleif nodded. We finish the roof next. Frode pointed at the edge where snow had piled. We clear this first. They scraped the snow aside. The sun broke through the clouds for a short moment. Light touched the broken planks. Thorleif lifted one. Rolf held another. They arranged them in clean lines. They worked until their arms shook. By midday, the roof stood half repaired. Thorleif sat on a beam to rest. Rolf stood beside him. Thorleif, Rolf said, before the storm my wife told me something. She said she felt watched from the woods. She said she felt the old woman's presence. I dismissed it. I thought it came from fear. But when she carved the small figure, she said she carved it for strength. She said she felt judged before the storm came. Thorleif looked toward the trees. The woods sat silent. She sees more than most, Rolf nodded. I think she saw our weakness before we did. Thorleif lifted another plank. She watches more families than you know. They worked until afternoon faded. When the light thinned, Thorleif said, We return to the longhouse. Your wife needs you. Rolf lowered his tools. She waits. They walked back through the snow. The longhouse glowed with warm light. Inside, Asgerd stirred a pot. Rolf's wife sat up a little higher than before. Hild sat beside her, telling a quiet story. Frode greeted his mother. Thorleif brushed snow from his cloak and hung it near the fire. Asgerd turned to Rolf. She gained strength. Her fever dropped. Rolf knelt beside his wife. He smiled at her. She smiled back. Thorleif watched them. He saw the shift in Rolf's shoulders. No fear weighed them now, only worry and hope. Asgerd set bowls before everyone. They ate warm stew. The room held soft sounds. No tension lingered. Only the low hum of fire and steady breath. Thorleif leaned toward Asgerd. She grows stronger. Yes, Asgerd said, but she stays here nights. Her leg needs support. We give it. Asgerd nodded. Later in the evening, Frode stepped outside to fetch wood. He ran back moments later. His breath came fast. Father, someone near the trees. Thorleif stood. He grabbed his cloak. He stepped outside with Frode. The cold hit sharp. The moon sat behind clouds. The birch trees swayed. Torleif scanned the shadows. "Where?" Torleif asked. "Near the far trunk," Frode whispered. Torleif walked closer. Snow crunched under his boots. The wind pushed low sounds across the field. He reached the birch line. He saw no figure, only dark branches. He stepped around the tree. He saw it then, a mark on the snow, a clean staff imprint, fresh, not covered by new flakes. Frode saw it too. He whispered, "She was here." Torleif knelt. He touched the imprint. She came to watch. Frode looked around with wide eyes. "Why?" Torleif stood slowly. "She checks if her judgment holds." Frode swallowed. "Did she see enough?" Torleif turned toward the longhouse. "She decides." They walked back. Torleif closed the door behind them and let the warmth return. Asgard approached. "What did you see?" Torleif kept his voice low. Her staff touched the snow. Asgard's eyes widened. "She still watches." "Yes." Rolf heard and looked up. His face tensed, but softened when he looked at his wife. "We follow her word." The night passed quiet. The family slept. Rolf's wife rested easy. Torleif lay awake for a time. His mind replayed the staff print. The old woman never stayed far after she judged. She liked to see if her words rooted or faded. Torleif knew this. He knew they must work steady until the winter broke. He closed his eyes at last. Morning came again with thin light. Torleif woke with renewed focus. Rolf stood near the hearth. His wife slept. Frode stretched beside the fire. Asgard prepared a kettle. Torleif addressed Rolf. "Today we repair the rest of your roof. Tomorrow we fix my fence. We follow her order." Rolf nodded. Asgard handed them warm broth. "Eat first." They sat and ate. Hild woke and crawled near the fire. When they finished, Torleif stood. "We move." Hours later, they reached Rolf's house again. They worked with steady rhythm. Torleif lifted planks. Rolf hammered them down. Frode held posts steady. Snow fell in thin lines. The roof rose back into its shape. By midday, it neared completion. Torleif placed the final plank. He drove pegs through with slow strikes. Rolf exhaled with relief. "It stands," Rolf said. "It does," Torleif replied. They cleaned the workspace. They gathered tools. They stepped back to admire their work. The house still needed small repairs inside, but it stood strong enough to shelter again. Rolf placed his hand on Torleif's arm. "You gave me strength." Torleif shook his head. "We follow her judgment. You return the help tomorrow." Rolf nodded. They returned to the longhouse. Rolf's wife sat with her leg raised. She looked better than before. Her eyes looked brighter. Her breath came steady. Rolf knelt. "The roof stands again." She smiled, weak but proud. "You did it." "We did it," Rolf said. "Together." Torleif stood near the hearth. He removed his gloves. He warmed his hands. He watched the flames. He felt the weight of each day. He felt the shift inside the house. Less fear lingered now. More strength filled the space. Still he thought about the staff imprint near the trees. He knew she followed every breath of their work. She watched for weakness. She watched for dishonesty. She watched for error. Night fell again. After the meal, after Rolf helped settle his wife to sleep, after Asgard checked the bandages, Torleif stepped outside one more time. The night air felt colder than before. The sky stretched wide and dark. Stars hid behind clouds. Torleif walked to the birch line again. He found no new imprint, only the one from before, now frozen harder. He looked toward the woods. They stood silent. He lifted his head. He spoke soft into the dark. We follow your judgment. We rise. The wind pushed through the branches. Snow drifted. No answer came. Torleif returned to the longhouse. He closed the door. He sat beside the fire. He let the warmth reach him. The second day under her judgment ended. The third morning brought a sharper cold. Frost clung to every beam of the longhouse. The air held stillness before sunlight reached the fields. Torleif woke before the fire stirred. He stepped outside. His boots pressed into new snow. The sky showed a thin red line on the far horizon. The trees stood silent. He breathed slow. He waited to see if the old woman left another mark. He walked toward the birch line. He searched the ground. No new staff imprint, only the old frozen mark from the night before. He crouched beside it. He brushed loose snow away. The shape still stood clear. One straight line, one perfect point at the base. He thought about her silence. He thought about the weight of her choice. She wanted proof the two homes bound together. She wanted proof the families followed her word. Torleif knew she stayed near. She watched from shadows. She listened to the cold. She waited to judge again if needed. Frode stepped outside. He rubbed his arms. You woke early, Torleif stood. The day starts now. Frode looked at the staff mark. Still no new one. She watches in her own way, Torleif said. Frode nodded. We fix our fence today. Yes, Torleif said. Rolf helps. We work until light ends. They returned to the longhouse. Asgerd stirred a pot of warm broth. Rolf sat near his wife. She rested with her leg covered. Her face looked brighter. She smiled when she saw Frode and Torleif. Asgerd handed bowls to everyone. Eat, the day holds long work. Torleif sat beside Frode. The broth warmed his hands. Hild woke and sat near her mother. She held a wool blanket around her shoulders. She watched Rolf's wife with soft eyes. Rolf spoke. She grows stronger each hour. Asgerd nodded. She needs days before she walks. Rolf lowered his head. I thank you for all. Torleif swallowed the last of his broth. Today you help us. Tomorrow you help your wife return to your home. Rolf nodded. When they finished, they prepared for the day. Torleif gathered tools. Frode carried rope. Rolf carried wooden posts and spare planks. They stepped outside. The cold hit hard. Snow glittered under pale light. Villagers passed nearby on their way to the central path. Some nodded. Some watched in silence. Torleif ignored the looks. They reached the fence line near the sheep field. The posts leaned outward like tired men. Snow covered the lower rails. Wolves had left deep marks along the base weeks before. Torleif touched a broken rail. We start here, Rolf knelt. The wood froze deep. We dig around it, Torleif said. Frode shoveled snow aside. He dug until he hit the frozen ground. Then he scraped until the base of the post showed. Rolf held the post steady. Torleif wedged a thick branch under it and lifted. Frode pushed. The post slowly pulled free. They tossed it aside. Replace with a new one, Torleif said. Rolf set the new post. Frode steadied it. Torleif hammered a wooden peg through the top. The sound echoed across the cold field. They repeated the work again and again. Hours passed. Their breath filled the air. Snow built on their cloaks. Their hands grew stiff. But the fence rose piece by piece. Each post strengthened the line. Each rail locked into place with clear strikes. Near midday, Asgerd and Hild walked toward them. Asgerd carried a basket. Hild walked close behind her. Their footprints left straight lines through the snow. Asgerd, Torleif said, surprised. You walked far. As far as needed, she said. You need food. She handed them warm bread and smoked fish. Frode ate fast. Rolf ate slow. Torleif breathed in the warm smell. It lifted his energy. Hild handed small pieces to them with quiet pride. Rolf looked at her. Your hands bring comfort. Hild smiled small. Mother said you need strength. Torleif watched his family. He watched Rolf. Something settled inside him. The two homes now moved like one. After eating, Asgerd and Hild returned to the longhouse. Rolf, Torleif, and Frode continued the work. They lifted more posts. They secured more rails. They scraped snow aside. They hammered pegs into place. The fence stretched across the field like a new spine taking shape. In the late afternoon, a shadow crossed the snow near the trees. Torleif noticed it first. He stopped hammering. He lifted his head. Frode followed his gaze. Rolf froze mid-step. A figure stood between the birch trunks, still, silent, hood low, staff in hand. Torleif's breath caught. She watches. Frode kept his voice soft. She waits for something. Rolf lowered his tools. We show her truth. The old woman did not step forward. She did not speak. She simply watched the three men repair the fence. She watched each strike. She watched each movement. Torleif steadied his breath. We continue. They returned to work. They did not rush. They did not tremble. They moved with steady rhythm. The old woman remained until the sun dipped low and shadows lengthened. Then she stepped back into the trees. She vanished between the trunks without a sound. Frode whispered. She left without a word, Torleif nodded. She saw enough for now. Rolf adjusted his cloak. She will stay near until judgment needs no more proof. They finished the last rail just as the light thinned. Torleif stepped back. He studied the new fence. Strong lines, straight posts, tight rails. The work held firm. Rolf spoke. Your sheep will be safe, Torleif nodded. And your roof stands because of our hands. Rolf gripped Torleif's forearm. One home alone weakens. Two homes rise. Frode echoed the old woman's earlier words. This is life. They walked back through the fading light. Snow fell in thin flakes. The longhouse glowed warm ahead of them. Rolf's wife sat near the door when they arrived. She looked stronger. She smiled. Torleif helped Rolf settle her back near the hearth. Asgerd brought broth. Hild set blankets around her. The warmth filled the room. The fire crackled. Your fence stands, Frode told Hild. Hild's eyes shined. Good. Wolves stay out. Rolf's wife touched Asgerd's hand. Your home saved me. I owe all to you. Asgerd shook her head. We follow her judgment. We share our strength. Torleif sat near the fire. He warmed his hands. He watched the flames. The old woman's silent presence still lingered in the room. After they ate supper, after Rolf's wife slept, after Frode settled near the hearth, Torleif stepped outside again. The sky looked darker than before. Clouds moved slow overhead. Snow drifted across the field. Torleif walked to the birch line. He saw the fresh staff imprint. New, deep, clean edges. It lay beside the old one. He crouched. He touched the mark. The snow still felt loose around the edges. She had stood there not long ago. Frode approached behind him. Another mark. Yes, Torleif said. She watches every step. Yes. Is she waiting for failure? Frode asked. Torleif shook his head. She waits for truth. Judgment never ends with her. She wants proof in many forms. Frode stood silent for a moment. Father, I feel she tests us more than others. She tests those who call her first, Torleif said. We called her. We bear the weight. Frode looked toward the woods. I want to be strong enough so she never doubts us. Torleif placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. Strength grows each day. You showed much today. Frode's eyes shined. Thank you. They walked back. Torleif closed the door behind them. Asgerd looked toward him. Another mark? Yes, Torleif said. She nodded as if she expected it. She listens to more than we speak. Rolf heard them. He cleared his throat. Torleif, when she stood near the trees, I felt something. I felt she looked through me. Not at me, through me, as if she weighed my heart. Torleif sat beside him. She sees truth in ways we do not. Rolf looked at the fire. I fear failing again. Torleif shook his head. Fear does not break you. Only silence does. You spoke. You came. You asked for help. You helped in return. You rise. Rolf lowered his eyes. I will work until strength returns to my home. Asgerd spoke from across the room. Tomorrow you help carry your wife home for the first time. Only for part of the day. She needs warmth, but she needs to see her place again. Rolf smiled, faint. She will be glad. Night settled. Frode slept near the fire. Hild curled under blankets. Rolf rested beside his wife. Asgerd sat near Torleif. They sat in silent comfort. The wind outside grew softer. Snow fell slow. Torleif whispered, She saw the day's work. She waits to see more. Asgerd whispered back, She watches in silence until she knows the homes bind strong. Torleif nodded. We bind strong. The fire cracked. The longhouse warmed. The night grew deeper. Torleif thought about the next day. They would carry Rolf's wife to her house. They would reinforce the inner beams. They would secure the roof. They would return her to warmth. They would prove the judgment held. He breathed slow. He let the warmth reach his bones. He closed his eyes. The third day under her judgment ended. The fourth morning started with low light and a quiet sky. No wind pushed the snow. The air felt heavy and still. Torleif woke early. He stepped outside before the fire rose. The cold touched his face like a sharp hand. He walked toward the birch trees again. He searched the ground. The old mark remained. The new mark remained. No fresh imprint. He looked into the woods. The branches stood still. No sound moved through them. He knew she still watched. She never stayed far after giving judgment. She let distance hide her, but she stayed close enough to see truth. He turned back toward the longhouse. Inside, Asgerd knelt near the hearth. She stirred hot broth. Frode warmed his hands near the fire. Rolf sat beside his wife. Hild fed the fire with small sticks. The warmth of the room eased the weight of the outside cold. Rolf's wife spoke first. Her voice sounded stronger than the day before. Today you carry me home, Rolf nodded. Only for a short time. She wants to see the house again, Asgerd said. It gives strength. Torleif sat near the fire. We leave when light grows. Rolf's wife looked at Torleif. Your family gives more than food. You give hope. Torleif shook his head. We follow her judgment. That binds us. She smiled small. Her judgment saved me. Torleif did not answer. He stood and checked the ropes they needed to secure her during the travel. Frode gathered blankets. Rolf checked his cloak twice, making sure he could keep his wife warm. When the light grew stronger, they stepped outside. They wrapped Rolf's wife in thick wool. They lifted her onto a small sled lined with furs. Torleif pulled from the front. Rolf walked behind. Frode walked beside the sled, steadying it when the snow drifted uneven. Asgerd and Hild walked ahead to check the path. Snow crunched under their boots. The sky held soft gray. Smoke rose from distant longhouses. They reached Rolf's rebuilt roof. His house looked stronger now. New beams lined the top. The structure stood straight. The door hung firm on its hinge. Rolf's wife looked at it with wide eyes. "It stands again," she whispered. Rolf nodded, his voice thick. "Our work, our strength, their help." Torleif helped lift her into the house. They set her near the hearth. The air inside felt cold, but no wind pushed through the beams. Torleif checked the walls. He pressed each post. They held strong. She touched the floor. "It feels steady." Torleif crouched beside her. "We reinforce the inner beams today. Rolf and Frode do that. I check your stores. Asgerd checks your bedding. We finish before the next freeze." Rolf's wife nodded. "I thank you all." Rolf knelt beside her and held her hand. Frode placed a small bowl of warm broth into her hands. She drank slow. Asgerd began clearing the floor. Hild brushed snow away from the doorway. Torleif opened the storage corner. He checked the jars. They held little. Enough for days, not weeks. Stood. "We bring more from our home." Rolf lowered his head. "Only enough to match your stores. I do not want to drain you." Torleif shook his head. Both homes rise. Rolf's wife watched them with quiet eyes. The old woman spoke truth when she said one home alone weakens. Torleif nodded. She speaks truth in every word. They spent the rest of the morning reinforcing the beams inside the house. Frode held posts steady while Torleif and Rolf hammered wooden pegs into place. Snow drifted through open cracks in the roof until Asgerd placed furs along the opening. Hild brought smaller wooden wedges from the sled to tighten the structure. Midday came. They paused to eat the bread Asgerd had packed. Rolf's wife rested near the fire. Frode sat beside her, talking softly. Torleif watched them. He saw Frode's growing strength. He saw Rolf's wife's courage. He saw the bond forming between the two homes. After the meal, they worked again. They fixed the wall near the sleeping area. They patched small gaps with woven straw and dried moss. They placed wood along the base to stop drafts. With each repair, the room grew warmer. Asgerd approached Torleif. "She needs more warmth before we leave her here." "We bring wool from our home," Torleif said. "We place her close to the hearth." Rolf overheard. "I stay here tonight." Torleif nodded. "You should." Asgerd placed her hand on Rolf's shoulder. "Your wife rests better with you near." Rolf smiled faint. "I want to hear her breathing each moment." Torleif left the house with Frode to gather wool, herbs, and spare tools. Snow fell in thin sheets. Their breaths rose in white trails. The village stayed quiet. A few villagers nodded at them as they passed, but none approached. They spoke in small whispers behind their hands. Torleif ignored it. Inside the longhouse, Asgerd prepared bundles. Frode lifted them onto his shoulder. Torleif checked the remaining stores once more. Thin, too thin, but they would manage. They returned to Rolf's house. Asgerd laid the wool blankets near the hearth. Hild placed herbs on the nearby shelf. Rolf's wife smiled as warmth filled the space. "You built more than a shelter today," she said. "You gave me hope." Torleif leaned his back against the wall. "Hope lives only if we work. The old woman watches for that." Rolf stepped beside his wife. "She saw our fence. She saw our roof. She saw our hands working together." Torleif turned toward the window opening. He looked toward the birch line across the field. He stayed quiet. He sensed something in the air, a shift, a change in the silence. "Asgerd," Torleif said, "take Hild home. Frode stays with me." Asgerd nodded. She lifted Hild's cloak. "We return at sunset." Hild hugged Frode. Frode smiled and nodded. Asgerd and Hild stepped outside. Their figures moved through thin snow until they faded behind the rise. Torleif stepped out next. Frode followed. Rolf joined them. The three stood outside the house. The sky dimmed, snow clouds thickened. A heavy cold pushed down like ice against their shoulders. "Father," Frode whispered, "something feels strange." Torleif nodded. "The air shifts before storms, but this feels like something else." Rolf looked around. "Something watches." Torleif narrowed his eyes. He scanned the tree line. For a moment, he thought he saw movement, a shape, a small tilt of a staff. But then it vanished. "Father," Frode whispered. "She stays near," Torleif said softly. "But something else moves too." A sound broke the silence, not wind, not snow, a low rustle, heavy, slow, coming from beyond the trees. Rolf tensed. "Wolves." Torleif lifted his hand. "Stay still." The sound grew louder, crunching snow, labored breaths. Then a shape stepped through the trees. A man, bent, frozen, covered in ice crust, his clothes torn, his eyes wide. Torleif stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man opened his mouth. His voice broke. "Help! Please!" Rolf grabbed his arm before he fell. Frode steadied his other side. They lowered him into the snow. Torleif knelt. "Where do you come from?" The man swallowed. "North Path. Storm took my home. My brother, gone." Torleif looked at the man's hands. Blue, stiff. "How long in the cold?" "2 nights," the man whispered. Frode's eyes widened. "2 nights alone?" Torleif felt a chill move through him, not from cold, from something deeper, something tied to the old woman's silent watch. "We bring him inside," Torleif said. Rolf nodded. They lifted the man. They carried him into Rolf's house. Rolf's wife's eyes widened. Asgerd had not yet returned, so Torleif set the man near the hearth. He placed blankets over him. Frode warmed water. Rolf rubbed the man's arms to bring life back. The man cried out in pain as warmth returned. Torleif poured water down his throat. Slowly the man's breathing steadied. Rolf's wife touched the man's forehead. "He burns with fever." Torleif felt the heat rising from the stranger's skin. "We need herbs. Frode, run to the longhouse. Tell Asgerd to return with them." Frode ran into the cold. His footsteps faded. Rolf stood beside Torleif. "Why would wolves not take him?" Torleif stared at the man's torn clothes. "He said the storm took his home. Maybe he ran far. Maybe he hid. Maybe fate pushed him here." Rolf's wife whispered. "Or someone watched him." Torleif's eyes lifted. "The old woman?" "She knows where life hides," she said. Torleif said nothing. He felt the truth of her words. Moments later, Frode returned with Asgerd and Hild behind him. Asgerd knelt beside the stranger. She mixed herbs in warm water. She placed them on his wounds. Torleif watched the man's face. His eyes fluttered. He whispered again. "Old woman, she saw me. She spoke my name." Torleif stiffened. "What did she say to you?" The man's voice broke. "She said, 'Seek the home where judgment lives.'" Rolf stepped back a pace. "Judgment?" Asgerd's eyes widened. "She sent him here." Torleif felt his breath tighten. The old woman knew this man's path. She sent him across the snow. She drove him toward them. She wanted something from this moment, something beyond their 2 homes. Rolf whispered, "Why him?" Torleif stood slowly. "Because she sees more than we do, and she tests more than 2 homes." The stranger breathed heavy. She said, "I must bring warning." Torleif knelt closer. "Warning of what?" The man's voice cracked. "A sickness from the north. Homes fall. People weaken. Winter grows harder." Torleif felt a cold deeper then snow settle inside him. He looked at Asgard. He looked at Rolf. He looked at Frode. The old woman's judgment had never been only about their two homes. She prepared them for something larger, something that now reached their doorstep. Torleif stood. His voice stayed low. We face more than hunger now. Rolf looked toward the window. Does she still watch? Torleif stared at the tree line. Yes, she watches for this. Asgard placed herbs on the stranger's chest. He grows weak fast. We save him if we can. Torleif nodded. We do everything we must. Outside, the wind rose for the first time that day. It pushed snow across the field in strong waves. The sky darkened. Frode lifted his head. Father, the storm returns. Torleif felt the weight of the old woman's words from days before. He felt her presence in the cold air. He felt the shape of her staff imprint frozen in the snow outside. He whispered to the room, Judgment grows heavier. The fourth day under her judgment turned into night. The wind grew louder as night settled over the house. Snow pushed against the walls. The sound rumbled like distant waves striking stone. Torleif stood near the door. He listened for anything beyond the storm. He wanted to hear footsteps. He wanted to hear the old woman's staff. Only the storm answered. Inside, the stranger lay near the hearth. His breath came fast. His skin burned with fever. Asgard pressed warm herbs on his chest. Rolf's wife sat upright, holding a cup of water to his lips. Frode fed the fire. Hild sat near the back wall, watching with wide eyes. Torleif stepped closer. The heat from the stranger's skin felt strong against the cold air of the room. Sweat beaded on the man's forehead. His hands trembled under the blankets. Rolf looked at Torleif. He grows worse. Torleif nodded. Sickness from the north moves fast. Asgard looked up. His fever spreads. This is not simple winter illness. Something follows him, the stranger whispered through cracked lips. Home, fall, many sick. Rolf's wife pressed a cloth to his head. You speak safe now. You rest. You breathe. The stranger gripped her wrist weakly. Old woman saw me. She said run south. She said judgment waits. She said only certain hands rise. Torleif felt a chill move through him, even as he knelt near the fire. What else did she say? The stranger swallowed. His voice came low. She said, winter holds teeth this season. It bites deeper than before. She said you must prepare the village. She said lives hang on your hands. Torleif sat back. He stared into the fire. The flames flickered in sharp lines. He understood now. Their work these days did not end with two homes. The old woman placed them on a path that reached beyond their fences and fields. Frode stepped toward him. Father, do we warn the village? Yes, Torleif said. At first light. Asgard looked at Torleif. Some will doubt. They doubt until fear touches them, Torleif said. Rolf's hands tightened around his wife's fingers. If the sickness reaches the village, we lose many. It already reached us, Torleif said. It lies on our floor. The stranger breathed harder. His eyes rolled back for a moment. Asgard whispered, He fights, but his strength drifts. Torleif closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the old woman's long silence. Her staff marks in the snow, her watch from the trees. She knew this sickness moved toward them. She knew the village needed unity. She knew fear broke homes faster than hunger. He opened his eyes. We keep him warm. We feed him water. We stay through the night. Asgard nodded. I stay at his side. Rolf's wife said, I watch too. Frode said, I keep the fire strong. Torleif placed a hand on Froda's shoulder. Good. Hours passed. The storm raged. Snow slammed against the walls. The house groaned under the force. But the fire stayed bright. They kept the stranger warm. They monitored each breath. Near midnight, the stranger stirred. His voice cracked. Old woman, she spoke of a choice. Torleif leaned forward. What choice? She said the village must rise or fall together. No home lives alone, not in storms like this. Rolf looked toward the window. She saw this storm before it formed. Torleif nodded. She sees storms before they reach the sky. The stranger coughed. His body shook. Asgerd steadied him. Rest, save your strength. He swallowed. His strength faded. His eyes closed. He drifted into a heavy sleep. Torleif stood. He stepped outside into the storm. Wind hit him hard. Snow whipped across his face. He scanned the tree line. He saw nothing, but he felt her presence in the wind. Quiet, cold, watching. He spoke into the storm. You brought him to us. You want us ready. We become ready. The wind shifted. Snow swirled upward in a brief twist. Then the storm regained its steady rage. Torleif returned inside. He shut the door. The warmth met him again. Asgerd looked at him. He rests now. Torleif wiped snow from his cloak. We take shifts tonight. None sleep too long. Rolf nodded. I stay awake first. Torleif did not argue. Rolf's wife leaned against the wall, breathing slow. Frode rested his back against a beam, still watching the fire. Torleif walked to the doorway that led to the small storage corner. He sat against the wall. He let his eyes close for a short moment. He did not sleep. He listened. The fire, the storm, the stranger's breath, the slow shifting of blankets, the faint steps of Rolf moving around the hearth. Hours passed. When Torleif stood again, the storm had quieted. The sky outside the window opening turned from deep black to dark blue. He approached the stranger. Asgerd sat beside him now. Her eyes held more worry than before. How is he? Torleif asked. He weakens, Asgerd said. But he breathes. Torleif placed his hand on the man's arm. He needs rest. He needs hearth heat. He needs village support. Asgerd nodded. We give him all. Torleif looked around the room. Rolf slept near his wife. Frode slept near the fire. Hild slept wrapped in thick blankets, all tired, all pulled by the work of the last days. He stood. I go tell the chieftain. Asgerd shook her head. You face questions. I answer them, Torleif said. Rolf stirred. I come with you. Stay with your wife, Torleif said. Rolf nodded reluctantly. Torleif stepped outside. The storm ended. Snow lay deep across the field. The sky held gray light. The cold felt sharp but quiet. He walked toward the village path. His boots crushed deep into the snow. Smoke rose from chimneys. Villagers stepped outside, clearing snow from their roofs. Torleif reached the chieftain's longhouse. 2 men stood outside. They eyed Torleif with suspicion. I need to speak to him, Torleif said. One guard nodded, stepped inside. Moments later, the chieftain stepped out, his cloak thick, his beard touched with frost. Torleif, he said, I heard the storm hit your house. Are your children well? They are safe, Torleif said, but something else reached us. The chieftain's eyes narrowed. What? A man from the north, sick. He brings warning. The chieftain stepped closer. Warning? A sickness spreads, Torleif said. Stronger than winter fever. He lost his home. He lost family. He wandered 2 nights through storms. The old woman sent him to us. The chieftain's breath caught. She sent him? Yes. The chieftain lowered his gaze. Then this is no simple matter. Torleif nodded. We need the village ready. We need herbs, broth, blankets. We need unity. If more wander here, we must help them. If sickness spreads, we stand as one. The chieftain looked past Torleif toward the woods. She never sends warning without purpose. Torleif stepped closer. Her judgment reached my home. It reached Rolf's. Now it reaches the village. We follow her guidance or we fall. The chieftain breathed slow. I gather the council. Stay nearby. Torleif nodded and turned back toward Rolf's house. The walk felt long. Snow weighed down his boots. Cold bit into his face. But his mind held steady. As he neared the birch line, he stopped. He saw a new mark, another staff imprint. Fresh, deep, centered in perfect stillness. He knelt. He touched the imprint. He whispered, "You watch everything." He rose and continued toward Rolf's house. Inside, the room felt warm. The stranger breathed easier for a moment. Rolf stood beside him. Asgerd stirred herbs. Frode fed the fire again. Torleif looked at them. The chieftain listens. The village prepares. Rolf nodded. Good. Torleif crouched beside the stranger. We help you survive. The man opened his eyes. I do not know if I live long. Torleif shook his head. You live long enough to bring warning. That alone holds weight. The stranger swallowed. Old woman said, you must stay strong. She said your hands decide who rises. Torleif felt the words press heavy against him. He nodded. We rise. Asgerd placed a bowl near the hearth. We feed him warm broth slowly. Rolf reached for the cup. I give it to him. Torleif stepped outside again. He needed a moment alone. The snow crunched under his boots. The cold air filled his lungs. He looked toward the woods. He whispered, You guide us. We follow. We do not fail. The wind pushed a thin sheet of snow across the field. A small movement caught his eye. A dark hood, a faint shape. Then gone. He felt her presence. He felt her approval. He felt her waiting for what came next. He returned to the house. Asgerd looked at him. You look troubled. We face more days of this, Torleif said. More storms, more sickness. Asgerd touched his arm. We face them. Together, he nodded. Together. Night approached. Rolf's wife slept. The stranger drifted between pain and rest. Frode and Hild stayed close to the fire. Asgerd prepared herbs for the next day. Rolf stood near the door. Torleif, do we survive this? Torleif looked at him. We survive if we stay united. If fear divides us, we fall. Rolf nodded. We do not divide. Torleif stepped to the hearth. He felt the heat. He watched the flames. The 5th day under her judgment ended. Morning broke with gray light and a sharp cold that settled over the fields like a heavy weight. Torleif woke before the fire rose. He sat up slow. His back ached from nights on hard planks. Frost clung to the inner beams of Rolf's house. The stranger lay near the hearth, wrapped in wool. His breath came lighter than the night before, but still weak. Rolf's wife slept with her head against the wall. Rolf sat with his hands clasped tight. Frode rested near the fire. Asgerd stirred a pot quietly. Hild slept under a thick blanket. Torleif rose. He stepped outside. Snow reached halfway to his knees. The sky looked thick with new clouds. He breathed in the cold air and looked toward the birch line. A fresh staff imprint waited there. Deep, clean, placed in perfect stillness. He walked toward it. He crouched. He touched the edges. Loose snow around it showed it formed not long ago. He stood. He looked into the woods. No shape moved. No sound came. He whispered, You still watch. He turned back to the house. Inside, Asgerd looked up. She left another mark. Torleif nodded. She wants us ready. Rolf stood. The stranger? Asgard checked the man's forehead. His fever drops, but slow. The man opened his eyes, weak. I hear you speak. Torleif walked to him. You rest. You brought warning. The man swallowed. My village fell in days. We thought it was winter fever. It grew stronger. Some lived, many died. The old woman stood near our boundary one morning. She looked at me. She spoke my name. She said I must travel south. She said, judgment waits there. Torleif nodded. She guided you here. The man breathed hard. She said I reach the ones who can hold the sickness back. She said one home shows strength first. Then that strength spreads. Rolf stepped closer. She meant our 2 homes. Torleif nodded. Yes. The stranger coughed. Asgard pressed herbs to his chest again. His breathing steadied. Rolf turned to Torleif. What now? Torleif looked toward the door. We gather the village elders. We tell them what he said. We prepare herbs. We teach the village to keep fires burning strong. We isolate the sick. We share food. We use all strength. Rolf's wife whispered, some will fear, some will deny. They deny until fear reaches their door, Torleif said. Frode stood. We help them understand. Torleif nodded. We move soon. He stepped outside with Frode. Snow fell in thin lines. The village lay quiet. Smoke rose from rooftops. A few villagers walked paths with heavy steps. Torleif looked at Frode. Stay strong. People watch you now. Frode nodded. I hold steady. They walked toward the village center. The chieftain waited near his longhouse. 2 guards stood beside him. The chieftain raised his hand. Torleif, he said, the council gathers. Inside the longhouse, 5 elders sat near the fire, their faces tense, their eyes sharp. Torleif stood before them. The chieftain spoke first. Torleif brings warning from the north. A sickness moves here. An elder with gray hair leaned forward. Another winter fever? Torleif shook his head. Stronger, a traveler reached us. He escaped a fallen settlement. Many there died. He survived only because the old woman guided him. The elders exchanged looks. Another elder said, She sent him? Yes, Torleif said. She told him to come here. She told him judgment waits with us. The room fell silent. Torleif continued. We prepare now. We boil herbs. We raise fires. We share food. We keep the sick near warm hearths. We do not scatter. We do not hide. We work together. The oldest elder narrowed his eyes. Why your home? Why her judgment on you? Torleif met his gaze. Because we needed help. Because she chose us to rise first. Because she trusts we do not fail. The chieftain nodded. I believe him. We listen to her through him. The elders sighed. One murmured, She never guides for nothing. Another said, We prepare. The chieftain turned to Torleif. Gather what you need. You have the village behind you. Torleif nodded. We start now. He left the longhouse with Frode. Snow drifted in soft lines through the air. Villagers watched him as he walked. Torleif raised his voice so all could hear. Gather herbs, keep fires strong, stay warm. If you feel sickness, stay near the hearth and call for help. We work as one. Some villagers nodded. Some looked frightened. Others looked uncertain. But they listened. Torleif and Frode returned to Rolf's house. The stranger breathed more steady. Rolf helped Asgard mix herbs. Hild sat holding the man's hand. Rolf's wife watched the door for news. Torleif stepped inside. The village prepares. Rolf nodded. Good. Asgard handed Torleif a small woven bundle. We use these on other homes. We visit each one. We show them how to treat sickness early. Torleif took it. We move soon. He turned toward the stranger. Your warning reaches many. The man opened his eyes, weak. She knew you listen. Torleif knelt. We listen, we rise. Outside, wind began to build, snow thickened, the sky darkened again. Another storm approached. We move before the storm hits, Torleif said. Rolf, Frode, come. Asgerd handed each man herbs. They stepped outside. They walked house to house. They instructed families. They warmed their spirits. They placed herbs in bowls. They checked the sick. They brought comfort to the frightened. The storm grew stronger. Snow swept across the village. The wind howled, but each house held steady. Fires glowed behind every wall. Smoke rose high. At the final house, an old man opened the door. He shook when he saw Torleif. You carry her judgment with you. Torleif nodded. We follow her guidance. The old man lowered his head. Then I trust your word. Torleif placed herbs near his hearth. Stay warm. Keep broth ready. If weakness grows, call. The man nodded. Snow struck the side of the house. The wind deepened its roar. Frode stepped close to his father. Father, the storm grows strong. Yes, Torleif said. We return now. They walked back through thick snow. The field between the houses felt longer than usual. The wind pushed them sideways, but they held steady. When they reached Rolf's house, the roof held firm. Warm light poured from the doorway. Relief washed through Torleif. Inside, Asgerd wrapped new blankets around the stranger. Rolf's wife sat upright. Rolf fed the fire. Hild brushed snow from Froda's cloak. Asgerd looked at Torleif. He grows better, not strong yet, but better. Torleif nodded. The village prepares. They know now. Rolf placed another log on the fire. She guided him. She guided us. She knew we needed to stand ready. Torleif felt the truth settle deep inside him. She chose these homes first because she knew we listen before fear blinds us. The stranger breathed steady. She said, one home leads, then the rest follow. Torleif placed his hand on the man's shoulder. You rest. You fought long. The storm hammered the roof. Snow slammed against the walls, but the house held steady. The repairs they made stood strong. Hours passed. The storm raged. They stayed together through the sound of wind and snow. The stranger slept. Rolf's wife regained her strength. Frode and Hild rested near the fire. Asgerd prepared more herbs. Rolf stepped to Torleif's side. Tomorrow we teach more homes how to treat sickness. Torleif nodded. Yes. Rolf looked toward the window. Will she come again soon? Torleif shook his head. She comes only when needed. She watches from the woods. Rolf breathed steady. Then she watches this storm. Torleif stepped outside. Snow blew in wild lines across the field. He looked toward the birch trees. For a moment he thought he saw her shape. A hood, a staff, still, silent, watching. Then the snow thickened and she vanished. He whispered into the wind. We follow your judgment. He returned inside. He closed the door behind him. Warmth met him. The fire glowed bright. The room felt steady, strong, ready. Rolf's wife spoke. You gave life to this home. Torleif looked at her. We gave life to each other. Asgerd smiled. The village lives because two homes learned to rise. Torleif sat near the hearth. The fire warmed his hands. The storm kept its rhythm. But inside the house, strength held steady. Hours later, the storm eased. Snow settled. Quiet returned. The stranger slept with easier breath. Rolf's wife rested calm. Frode and Hild slept. Asgerd leaned against Torleif's shoulder. Torleif whispered, we face the next days together. Asgerd whispered back, together. The night grew calm. The storm passed. Their strength held. The 6th day under her judgment ended, and their winter began with new resolve. The storm fades now. The fire lowers. You rest with this family as silence returns to the village. The old woman watches from the woods, waiting for the next step in their lives. If you want to walk with them again in the next story, stay close. A new tale waits, filled with deeper winter trials and the slow strength of homes that rise together. Before you go, take a small moment for yourself. Slow your breath. Let your shoulders settle. A free gift waits in the next video. A quiet guide to old village life. Stay warm, stay steady. A new night approaches.